Hi, everyone. Welcome. We're glad you're spending some time with us this evening. I'm Alyssa DeFilippo with Parents Helping Parents. So this evening, if you want to be at What Are Special Needs Trusts and the Letter of Intent, you are at the right place. This is the second in a 5-part series. And the 3 remaining sessions are on the 16th, the 24th, and the 30th. And I will put links to the Connections California calendar in the chat, so you can sign up for them if you'd like. As I said, I'm Alyssa DeFilippo. I'm the program manager for Connections California, which is a statewide online resource and information hub for transition to adulthood and adult services for families, parents, caretakers, loved ones, and self-advocates of any disability. So I want to thank Beatrice for doing the translation this evening. She always does such a great job. So thank you, Beatrice. And I'd like to introduce our presenters for the evening. They are, again, from Special Needs Planning Group in Santa Clara. And Ken Prodger is a financial advisor who specializes in helping families plan for the future, including special needs trusts, life care planning, letters of intent, and how to obtain and preserve government benefits. Ken understands that parents of children with special needs often feel overwhelmed with therapy, IEPs, countless other issues, leaving little time or energy to address financial concerns. And yes, Ken has a son with special needs, so he knows firsthand, and he is a past board chair of Parents Helping Parents, so we thank Ken for his service. Scott Gill is a seasoned financial advisor with a passion for building long-lasting relationships with his clients. He specializes in providing financial planning services to families with special needs, helping them to achieve their financial goals. As a member of the Financial Services Institute, Scott brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to his clients. So I'm going to turn it over to them. I thank everyone for being here, and I certainly thank our presenters for being here. And I'll just stay on until...
All righty, Alyssa, thank you so much. Ken, can you see the screen?
Yes, we're ready to go.
Okay.
So for those of you who joined us last week, this slide probably looks a little the same, just the wording has changed a little bit. So we're going to talk about special needs trusts in this presentation, then skip over to the letter of intent. This labyrinth game or whatever, that if you're familiar with it, you know, where you have the little marble and you have to navigate this maze. So part of special needs planning is not only guiding you through the maze of getting to where you want to be, but also how to avoid the different pitfalls. And that's really, you know, sometimes, you know, half the work is what you're going to do and then what not to do. And if you follow traditional financial planning guidelines or listen to a person on the radio or whatever, that's great. Special needs child, a lot of times those rules don't apply to you. So this is important. So we're going to be talking about special needs trusts, and I want to emphasize that Scott nor I are attorneys. Okay, so what we're trying to do is take some fairly complex legal ideas and instruments and put them in common sense language that people can understand. So it's just kind of a layman's guide to some of this stuff. Certainly, you know, consider the advice and stuff that you get from an attorney who does this. One thing that we do emphasize is that, you know, use an attorney that is qualified and has experience with special needs trusts. I mean, I can tell a story quick of somebody that we engaged. We looked at the trust and I was like, wow, this trust is really not that well written. And then I found out that it was a guy that they hired their friend in college who was a real estate attorney. And he thought, okay, well, yeah, he's an attorney. He can do the trust. No, you need somebody with specific experience on special needs because laws do change. And it's a very, very specialized area of law. We also are not CPAs or taxes. So sometimes I don't think in this presentation, we're going to talk about taxes much. But anyway, although we give tax advice, we do not prepare any type of tax documents or in the preparation of any type of tax reporting. Okay, again, I'm not going to belabor this on some of the stuff, but basically what we want to talk about, Special Needs Planning Group was formed specifically to address the financial concerns of families that have special needs children. This is what we do. a very large percentage of our clients and our families that have special needs kids, over 80% of our clients are our families. Occasionally we get the question from a family saying, gee, I know a friend who doesn't have a special needs child. Can you still help them out? Yes, we can, but our major focus is helping families that have special needs. As we are both certified financial planners, meaning there's a lot of times people say that they're financial planners, but they don't have the college and background for the CFP, for the certified financial planner. We're also both chartered special needs consultants, meaning that after we went through the rigorous courses of a CFP and passed a cumulative test, we then continued the education to get specific training and education on the particular financial issues that families with special needs children have. I know this is a statewide presentation, so we are part of the Academy of Special Needs Planners. You know, although we have a vast network in the Bay Area, we do have clients that are in Southern California and San Diego, and we partner with attorneys and things that we've met through the Academy of Special Needs Planners. So it's a fairly small group of people that really focus on the special needs community. Okay, I'm going through these slides pretty quick because we did this a week ago, so I want to make sure that we get to the meat of the presentation as quick as possible. The quality of life of the individual, that's what we're really doing all the planning for. Here's all the different things that we talk about when we do the planning, whether it's the child is a regional center client, what type of out-of-pocket cost do you have? What about SSI versus SSDI, conservatorship? What about our IEP, a life care plan, and all of these different things. So we're going to be taking a look at two of the pieces of the puzzle tonight, and that's going to be special needs trusts and letter of intent. Okay, so with special needs trust, there's basically three types of special needs trusts. There's a first party special needs trust. Sometimes in legalese, you'll hear it being referred to as a D4A trust. There's a pooled trust. Sometimes that's referred to as a D4C. And then the third common special needs trust is what we call a third party special needs trust. And that by the most common deals with developmental disabilities. So we're going to break down each of those individually. So a first party special needs trust, think of it when we talk about first party, it means it's the disabled person's money. The most common example is this is when somebody gets an injury settlement, they're in a car accident, there's some sort of lawsuit that they sue and they get some sort of money settlement. Still means they may have a tremendous amount of medical issues that they have to deal with. Maybe they're not able to work. We can take those proceeds of that settlement and put it into what's called a first party special needs trust. The big difference with a first party special needs trust, it is considered a payback trust. So although your assets will go into a special needs trust, at the end of your lifetime or the person's lifetime, the state has the ability to go back and be reimbursed for any expenses they've had for that person's healthcare and living situation. Remember, a special needs trust, what we're doing is we're taking assets out of the estate of an individual so that they can qualify for what we consider needs-based government benefits. So some of those benefits are income-based, some of those benefits are asset-based. A recent change that, Medi-Cal no longer counts assets against you, it's purely income. But if somebody has a huge injury settlement and a lot of money goes in there, we don't want to necessarily have to spend all of that money on medical care right from the get-go. Some people may ask, well, it's not that big of an advantage if you have to pay it back. Well, the keys on this is the payback trust, the first party trust, two main things to remember. First of all, you pay back at what is Medi-Cal reimbursement rates, which means it's very low cost healthcare. So that's something. So something that may cost, X amount of dollars. If you had private insurance, it's going to be significantly less if it's under the Medi-Cal payback rules. So it certainly saves costs in terms of the actual expenses. The second thing is they never charge you interest on any of those, the payback. So if you did $10,000 worth of reimbursement, and that was 20 years ago, 20 years later, when the person passes away, they still only owe the 10,000. There's no interest accrued or anything like that. So it's still a really good deal for an individual to be able to put money in a first party special needs trust, because it can certainly lower healthcare costs, and certainly there is no interest or anything in terms of carrying that debt. It's created for the sole benefit of the person, and it generally is the individual's parent, grandparent, legal guardian, or whatever that sets that up. Sometimes when there isn't those things, actually the court will even set it up on their behalf. But the big thing, first party special needs, remember, it's a payback trust. There is no remainder beneficiary. The state will use that to reimburse their expenses that they've had. The second type of trust is a pool trust, and we come across these from time to time. A pool trust is really where the assets of the disabled person are pooled, mean commingled with other people's trusts. So these are always run by nonprofits. There's a number of them in California. And why do they do that? You're an individual have a significant amount of assets to be able to justify having their own special needs trust and having trustees and trust protectors and all of those different things in there. So it may be just best to have a pooled trust. The downside of the pooled trust is that there's little flexibility on the management, distributions, the service of the trust. You're really just being one of many into a pooled trust. So of clients that we've had that have been in the pooled trust, a lot of times they're not necessarily real happy with the service of the pooled trust. Sometimes they only make disbursements on one time a month or whatever. All of your stuff is commingled with other people's assets. However, you don't need a special needs trust to do that. The nonprofit has a master special needs trust that you just basically join and deposit those funds. Expenses are fairly reasonable for lower amounts. However, if you have significant assets, then probably it's cheaper to do it on your own, where you have your own trustee managing that. So this is for assets to fund the trust, and it's an easy way to begin that. Another big negative on that is once you put your money in the trust, there's no way of changing it. So it is once you put it in there, they're not going to allow you to take the money out, because it is a nonprofit, it is a pooled organization, so it is limiting in those aspects. Type of trust we're going to talk about is third party, and this is really the crux of what most people with developmental disabilities, the tool that we use. It's funded by a third party, meaning it's somebody else's money. So this is where the parent, generally parents fund it, grandparents can fund it, brothers and sisters can fund it, or whatever. The big thing with the third party is there's no payback provision. Why is there no payback provision? Because it never was the disabled person's money in the beginning. So that it's for their benefit, but it's never their actual assets. So that you can have a remainder beneficiary, meaning that when the person for whom the trust was drafted for, that person passes away, if there's money left over in that trust, that can go to a remainder beneficiary. Oftentimes it's siblings, brothers, sisters, other members of the families, sometimes different charities that they want to do. So this is by far the most popular of any type of trust for the disability community in terms of developmental disabilities. These third parties trusts can either be irrevocable or revocable. We do have some issues of that if it's revocable in terms of gifting. That's a fairly complex thing that we won't go into, but it's not considered, if the trust is revocable, meaning it can be amended, it can be changed, then the gift is never completed in terms of the IRS ruling. So what they say is, yeah, you gave so much into a special needs trust, but the gift was not complete because it could be pulled back down. With third-party special needs trusts and first-party special needs trusts, there's two main reasons of why do we do a special needs trust. It's to preserve government benefits, what we call needs-based government benefits. That's your SSI, Medi-Cal, based upon the person's income and assets, and control. Sometimes we come across families where they go, gee, but my child can be employed. In fact, it went to college, all of these different things. However, they don't have the, they feel they could be taken advantage of financially. So that it's a way for the parents to control those assets so that they're always being supervised and they know that they will last a lifetime. So again, what you want to remember with the third-party trust, it's to protect government benefits and for control of the assets by the third party or the parents. Okay, Scott, I'm going to skip over to you. So this is, there you go. There we go.
All right, Ken, I may have cut you off real quick. All righty. Ken, can you see that? Thumbs up? Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so thanks for covering the special needs trust. And I know that was the transition there was a little rough, but we'll come back to that slide at the very end. So one thing to remember, as Alyssa pointed out and as Ken was going through, so we will be handling questions on both topics at the very end. One thing we do want to remind people, and on that QR code, so sometimes there are people that have very specific questions to their own needs. And so we do offer a complimentary consultation for anyone that's attending if they would like to have a discussion in privacy and to continue exploring how these particular topics relate to them and their family. Now, with that being said, the second half of our presentation, we're diving into the letter of intent. And so as we come back to this, the jigsaw puzzle, right? As Ken mentioned earlier, this is really about quality of life. And so last week, as we were talking from a big picture, how do all of these pieces in the puzzle fit into one's financial plan, not just for the parents, but also for the loved one with special needs? We're going to be honing in right now on this letter of intent. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into what is it? Why should I consider having one? What actually goes into one? And what's the frequency in terms of how often do I need to update it? These commonly come up as Ken and I are meeting with the families that we have the privilege to serve. So let's dive in. Letter of intent, right? LOI, otherwise known as a memorandum of intent as well, okay? These terms, they're going to be synonymous with one another, the same thing. So one thing that I want everyone to understand is that you can start this at any point in time. You do not need to meet with a legal professional necessarily to get this done. This is something that you can draft up on a Word document, right? This is something that you can put pen to paper on. There are templates that Ken and I have that we can share with you, and we'll include one as an example at the conclusion of this presentation. But just know that it is something that could be considered by the courts, but by no stretch is it something that you have to go and see a legal professional to set up. Okay, so who might use this? Who might be the one to actually start this process? Well, first and foremost, this is a tool that is very handy for current or future successees and guardians. Okay, so in many cases, for most of the families that we meet, we're speaking with the parents, right? We're meeting with the parents who do have a loved one with special needs. And so one thing that we discussed last week was no one knows your child better than you do as the parent. What are the things that you know about your loved one that no one else does, but that you would want to impart and share with a future caregiver, right? And so some of the examples that we'll go through on these next page are here to help jog your memory. But at the end of the day, they're there to help provide the best quality of life for your loved one itself, right? And this can be related to how one likes to spend their free time. This could be related to how one feels in social settings versus non-social settings. This could be the routine that someone might have when they wake up or when they go to bed. Those are just a few of the examples, okay? But some of the other things that we're going to want to look to include are about history of the child, specifically their medical history, right? Who could practitioners be that are not only in their lives today, but ones that they have met with in the past, right? Treatments that are currently being given, but more importantly as well, treatments that were tried and may not have been successful. Sometimes it's just as important to know what didn't work in as much as what is or currently is working, okay? One of the parts that we also went into last week was this idea of hopes, dreams, and values. Okay. So although we are financial planners, we discuss with our families the wealth side of the picture. We also want to take into account the emotional side too, right? We want people to understand, okay, well, what are the aspirations that you have for your child or for your children? Okay. What are the aspirations that you know that your child has for themselves? Right? And how do you want to relay that message so that way the next generation of caregivers or guardians can be on the same page, right? We don't want someone new who would be stepping in to have to start from scratch and to figure things out. We want to give them a roadmap. And that's exactly what the letter of intent is designed to be. It's designed to be a roadmap, right? To show you where the path is that leads to the most amount of success to have this individual live their best life. So when do we update it? Well, it's a living document, right? This is something that you're going to want to update as needed. We typically recommend at least annually, but there may be life events that happen before a regularly scheduled update, right? And if and when that happens, we want to jot it down, right? Think of it as an opportunity to just update and refresh the notes that we have, okay? Whoops. So the whys and the hows for the LOI. So I just started talking about this a little bit ago, but why do we do it? Well, again, it's about explicit and specific instructions. It's about becoming familiar, right? Knowing who this person is, knowing what makes them tick to the best of your ability, what works for them, what provides them, again, that best quality of life. The when, okay? As we talked about, it's a working document, whether we update it annually, whether we update it every 6 months, it's just something that you want to keep handy to know that you can make changes to it as soon as possible. One of the things that we do with our clients is we have a secure document storage vault. We request and recommend that folks leverage this as an opportunity to regularly update their LOI as they're updating some of their financial resources that we work with them on. Why? Because it's in a single place where multiple people know where it's located, but it's also a reminder that, hey, this document is just as important as some of the other financial pieces that we might be talking with them about too. Okay. It's just a constant reminder that it is a piece of the puzzle and we don't want to let this become overly outdated. Okay. So although I mentioned we do have templates that we can use, sometimes a template doesn't necessarily encompass everything that we want to share about ourselves or about our family members. Perfect example that I'll share. Okay. There was a letter of intent that we had the opportunity to review. The mother was currently the conservator and also the trustee, but what she wanted was first and foremost to identify who the future trustees would be upon her incapacitation or her passing. In this case, it was 2 of her daughters. She had 3 children. One with special needs, 2 that were neurotypical. She wanted to nominate the 2 neurotypical children as the future and co-trustees. Okay. The second piece that she wanted to have, though, was, well, in the event that my daughter passed after the mom's passing, she wanted to make sure that a very special service took place. Now, the mom was part of a temple in her city. Now, she did not grow up practicing any specific religion with her children as they were growing, but she herself found it very important to be a part of a community. And what she wanted to have was to say, when my daughter with special needs passes away, she wanted one of the future trustees to reach out to the temple so that way they could hold a ceremony where other people could attend and participate and have a celebration of life. Okay. So that is one example of something that you may not find on a typical template, but it's an opportunity to express a certain feeling or value or a belief that you want to make sure is taken care of. Part of the letter of intent, in as much as outlining how to provide the best quality of life for your loved one, is also to impart wishes from the grave as well. Okay. Things that you want to take place if and when you're no longer here. Okay. So who would be a part of this? Well, we talked about one example as being the parents. Oftentimes, Ken and I have the opportunity to meet with the parents, but you may want to include close family friends. There could be family friends or neighbors that very much know your children or your loved one, that are a part of their life. Okay. You may want to include physicians, current physicians that you're working with. You may want to include additional practitioners. Like, for example, there could be individuals that create custom services or custom tools. There was one where we had a practitioner that creates custom orthotics for a child that we work with. And it turns out that the staff was wonderful with this young gal, and they loved going there not only to get the tool that they needed, but they loved the experience of going through and having regular updates. Okay. Other pieces of the puzzle that we might want to include, we might want to put in there provisions for daycare, day centers. What type of center might we want to have? Do we want to be in a facility that encourages outdoor activities, that encourages certain types of social activities? Do we want to avoid places where perhaps there is a lot of sitting around, watching TV, watching movies, right? So we can be as specific as creative as we want in terms of identifying who to include, the people, what to include, perhaps the places and the activities, but more importantly, to outline specific actions to take at some point in the future as well. So again, as we take this a step further, I've already gone through some of these examples. One of the pieces that tends to come up on a very regular basis as well is, where do I want my child to live and whom do I want them to live with? Okay. Might it be in the family home that they have where they could bring in caregivers? Might it be in a group home? Could it be nearby a very specific sibling who they have a close relationship with? Okay. When it comes to doing things for fun, maybe there's a loved one that really wants to avoid cold weather, rainy cold weather, versus someone that enjoys to be near the beach because they like to walk on the trails, the sidewalks near the beach, or perhaps to dip their toe in the water or in the ocean. Okay. So much of this, again, is about providing clarity, right? Two of the slides ago, we talked about very, very specific. Be as specific as we possibly can. Okay. What are the boundaries of which someone else should know? And as we talked about just a moment ago, as well, as we go into the conservator and as we talk about the guardian, there are certain people whom you know better than anyone else and whom you've talked with as well, that you want to be a part of your child's life and your loved ones. They know their circumstances and they know their situation. So these next three slides, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at an example. This is an example of a template. This is not the exact template that we are going to share with you, but for illustrative points, it's going to show you what one might be. So as we look up top here, we're going to look at, well, what are some of the services and the benefits that you might be able to receive? Okay. Some of these services might be for children with impairments. developmental disabilities, clinics sponsored by support groups. Okay. Where might there be gaps in benefits, which could be key, as in what might I need to be aware of? Where do I need to start filling in some holes, given the resources that we currently have, but also based upon what might not be available moving forward? Okay. The budgeting piece tends to be very important as well, not just where one might be receiving their resources from, whether they're needs-based government resources or whether they could be from future distributions, assets left at a third-party trust, but we want to know what they're being spent on and by whom they're being paid by. Okay. Changes to your financial picture that would otherwise influence the quality of life too, as in, if this were to happen, I want that to take place. Okay. Or we need to be aware of this particular condition and what it could mean moving forward, as then we need to adjust what the quality of care could be. Although it's not listed or circled on this left-hand side, I think it's very important to be listing out those important relationships. Again, siblings, physicians, could be educators, or it could be co-workers if the individual is working as well, part-time employment possibly too. This next page here is going to dive a little bit deeper into the medical history for. We talked a little bit about this last time. What has worked, what is currently working, what has been attempted but maybe did not have as much success. This would be a great place to be able to include all of that down there, right? And again, whether it's types of medications, okay, whether it is how one responds and reacts when going to see certain practitioners, okay, as in, hey, I can only go see a dentist if I'm under anesthesia in order to get certain types of cleanings or x-rays done. Okay. We're going to want to look at, again, additional practitioners in terms of, well, how frequently are we needing to meet with these folks? Is it 6-month checkups, annual checkups, or as needed checkups as well, and as much as potential allergies that you could have too. And I think on the last page, as we're going to go, this is talking more about the fulfilling side, right? The discretionary time. Okay. What type of activities do we enjoy doing? How often do we like to do them? With whom do we like to do them with? Okay. What do they like to do by themselves versus much as what do they like doing in a social setting? Okay. How are we staying physically fit, right? Do we have other trainers or do we have other therapists that are coming in, right? Are there certain exercise routines that work? We talked a little bit about the family values and the religious side as well. Are there certain religious customs that we want to ensure are going to be taking place, right? That the next trustees or the next guardians and conservators should be aware of too. So again, this is meant to be something that is very creative, but at the same time, very, very specific based upon what you know. We want to leave a roadmap, and we want to ensure that the future generation knows as best as they can how to provide the highest quality of care. Yeah. And I think with that, we have come to the top. And so this last slide here, as Ken and I mentioned during our last session, and as we briefly went over at the end of Ken's special needs presentation slides, he and I are located here in the South Bay area, right? Santa Clara, California, right by Levi Stadium. Our website's right here, specialneedsplanningroup.com. We've provided this QR code for those individuals if they are interested in or would like to have a complimentary conversation offline. You're more than welcome to take a picture of the QR code. It will take you directly to our website where you'll have our online calendar link, but we will in the chat function put a few documents. The letter of intent template will be in there for you. There will be a complimentary consultation sheet for those that like the good old-fashioned PDF to download and fill out. But otherwise, Ken, do you have anything else that you'd like to add before we address some of the questions and answers that have popped up?
Yeah, I want to add how the letter of intent can assist the trustees of a special needs trust. So that if the parents pass away, maybe the child has a passion for swimming or horseback riding or doing the things. That's letter of intent can guide those future trustees of what would be acceptable expenses and activities that the trust should pay for. So it's great. So if the child has a passion for horseback riding, then it's going to give some guidance to that trustee to go ahead. It's an acceptable expense to pay for horseback riding lessons. Even to the point of sometimes on vacations, we've done it where that the letter of intent says to the trustee that, yeah, you can pay for the person, and this particular one, to go on a cruise. Every year she wanted to go on a Mexican cruise, to do that, and that it would pay for a caretaker or a friend, that the special needs trust, that was acceptable from the special needs trust standpoint, to pay for a guardian or a friend to accompany the person on the cruise. So you can basically help direct the trustees. I mean, think of it. You're funding the trust with your money, basically. Isn't it a great idea to have some guidance of what would be acceptable expenses, to be able to, take full advantage of the special needs trust to enhance the life of the person that we're trying to protect. In other cases too, we've actually seen it work on the opposite way, where they talked about all the different things. It was a very well detailed letter of intent, and it never meant, in fact, it even mentioned that the child was afraid of water. Trustees, they went to, and this was a professional trustee with the bank or whatever, that the people that were the individual lived, they went to try and get the special needs trust to pay for a pool. Okay. And that letter of intent showed that, yeah, that child, was afraid of water. So what the guardians were doing is they were trying to get the special needs trust to pay for a pool for themselves, not really for the benefit of the child. So again, it gives the trustees the ability of what's an acceptable expense, and in some rare cases, even what would not be an acceptable expense, because then it's something is dictated in that letter of intent. So it's really a great tool. Sometimes people talk about, well, gee, can't I just update the trust every time? That's an expensive thing of doing amendments on trusts. Do it on the letter of intent. If there's any questions, again, it's not a legally binding document, but certainly judges and trust officers look at that for guidance of making decisions on how to spend funds from the special needs trust.
Well,
Okay, lots of thank yous. I think we covered all the questions. Lots of thank yous and hearts, and you have our appreciation for showing up tonight, last week, and 3 more times coming. Thank you, Beatrice, and thank you everyone out there for coming and for asking good questions and being such a good audience. I think